Hey everybody, Carl Lanning, Brazos River Charter School with this week in history, specifically May the 31st through June the 6th. Well, we've got an awful busy week this week. Let's see, one of the big events anyway, the Battle of Midway. The Battle of Midway began on June the 4th of 1942, Midway Island, right here, located about 1,200 miles northwest of Hawaii. That is the reason why this tiny little speck in the ocean, and that's about all it is, was so important to the Japanese. This was a huge battle, and we're not going to go through the entire thing, but I did want to deal with one man who had a front row seat, a very unenviable front row seat to the entire battle. That was a man by the name of Ensign George Gay, Jr. of Waco, Texas. George Gay Jr. of Waco, Texas was a member of a torpedo squadron serving on board the aircraft carrier USS Hornet on that particular day. He was flying an aircraft called the Douglas Devastator, which was an absolutely obsolete aircraft. This thing is flying proof that, well, we went to war with what we had, not what we wanted, because this thing should not have been flying, but what we had. The inexperienced American flyers, when they took off, and almost immediately got separated from their fighter cover. 15 of these aircraft, each with a 3-man crew, attacked the Japanese fleet. Every one of them was shot down. Every man was killed as well, with the exception of Ensign Gay. Ensign Gay went into the water. He was strafed several times, almost run over by maneuvering Japanese warships. But for about an hour and a half, he got to watch ringside the American dive bombers come in and put 3 Japanese aircraft carriers to the bottom of the ocean. Like I said, about an hour and a half. However, he ended up spending about 30 hours in the water before he was finally rescued by a flying boat. This is Ensign Gay recovering. That's Admiral Chester Nimitz. Ensign Gay lost 30 pounds during that 30 hours due to blood loss, dehydration, and flat-out stress. So, Ensign Gay, the Battle of Midway, I wouldn't want to trade places with him. Now, speaking of survivors, on June the 1st of 1874, this man, who I mentioned to you last week, Ludgar Silvaris, was born June 1st, 1874, on the Caribbean island of Martinique. Martinique is a, small Caribbean island, beautiful island in and of itself, but Mr. Silvaris Ludgar, he had been a convicted felon, and apparently he really liked to drink and he really liked to fight, and finally the police had a little bit too much of it. In May of 1902, rather irritated with his antics, they decided to throw the man into solitary confinement. Now, there were no windows. This thing had a steel door, just a tiny little slit in front of it. That was it. They had saved his life by doing so, because the next morning, Mount Pelée erupted. This is the volcano on the island itself, created the island. A 1,075-degree pressure wave pretty well flattened every building in the city of Saint-Pierre, except for the most sturdy built, killed almost everyone. We'll get to that in a minute. It was followed by a superheated cloud of gas and dust. Now, Ludgar could see this headed his way, so he took off all his clothes, he urinated on them, and stuffed them into that slit. When that pressure wave and superheated gases hit, it got up to about 1,000 degrees, it's estimated, inside his cell. However, he survived. He was in there for 4 days until rescuers finally heard his cries and were able to dig him out. He was badly burned, as you saw, but he did go on to become somewhat of a minor celebrity, touring with the Barnum and Bailey Circus, being billed as the man who survived Doomsday. On June the 2nd of 1889, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Butch, Sundance, and the Hole-in-the-Wall Gang robbed their very first train. Although they can only be tied directly to 4 bank robberies, 4 train robberies, and the robbery of a payroll for a coal mining company, these guys were so successful that they got attributed, just about every robbery in the West was attributed to these guys. The reason why they were so successful, $35,000 on average per robbery successful, was because they planned things out to the last detail. They did reconnaissance, they planned their escape route, These guys were really, really good. Now, also, nobody ever actually got killed in any of their robberies, too, which is pretty amazing. Although, if you ever saw the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, there's a great scene where Sundance says, "Butch, you think you used enough dynamite there?" when he blows up one of the cars. I think that's probably the one that they're referring to in the movie. But, seriously, nobody was killed. Although pretty soon, railroad detectives and the famous Pinkerton agents were all over these guys. Their downfall began really in 1900 in Fort Worth, an area that was called the Hell's Half Acre, which is near downtown. They decided to dress in their best duds and get their photograph taken. This is the photograph. It turned out so well that the photographer decided to put it in his window using his advertising. Just so happened that a Wells Fargo agent happened to see the photograph, recognized Butch, and pretty soon their photographs were on every wanted poster across the United States. So in 1901, they fled to Argentina and ended up buying a cattle ranch. Apparently laid low for a while, but starting in 1908, you had a series of robberies just across the border in Bolivia. They attributed to the Yankees Americanos. Well, one of these robberies, the Bolivian cavalry tracked the Yankees Americanos down to the beautiful town of San Vicente, Bolivia. You can tell, great tourist attraction here. San Vicente itself, I believe this is the garden district of San Vicente. They tracked them down to an adobe hut and surrounded the place and started to fire. Now, the Mauser rifles that the cavalry carried had no problems going through the adobe walls. There was a firefight for a brief period. Then the cavalry soldiers reported they heard 2 shots, and that was it. When they went inside, they saw that Sundance had apparently had some sort of a wound in his midsection and had been shot in the forehead, Butch in the side. So apparently it was a mercy-killing suicide. They were allegedly buried in this graveyard somewhere, but we have absolutely no idea where exactly. There is a grave that's marked, supposed to be theirs, but who really knows? By the way, their last meal was sardines and beer. What a way to go. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Well, that's it for this week. But to let you know what's coming up next week, one of the classic John Wayne Westerns ever. And what we're going to deal with is who wanted top billing over John Wayne in this movie. My name's Carl Lanning, Brazos River Charter School, and we look forward to seeing you right here next week.